Hey guys, so I'm going to show you how to make a slab tile. We're going to start from clay to cutting down our actual tile. So all of those steps in between, whatever you need, please feel free to fast forward through the videos. I should have some time codes down below in the description for you guys to easily find what you are looking for. All right, so we're going to walk through the steps on how to roll out a slab. What you're going to need is your bag of clay, your tools from the toolkit. So the ones we're going to be using is the small modeling tool, popsicle stick, and a toothpick. So those are the two tools we're using today, as well as some sort of cylinder. So for your cylinder, as long as it's nice, smooth surface, parallel, it's not crooked, not super lumpy, whatever you can find, that'll work. If you cannot find a cylinder, just email me, let me know. I have a video tutorial for that as well. But we're going to use the cylinder, so I'm going to set that aside. That is all the tools that we're going to need for today. So we're going to start step one. Step one, get your clay. So I have my bag of clay. She's looking a little bit messy right now, but she's fine. Our bag of clay, we are going to want to grab about a softball sized piece of clay. Now I'm using this for a bunch of classes, so I already have a softball sized piece prepared. I'm going to just grab that from the bag there. So about a softball size. It doesn't have to be exactly a softball. You do want it to be relatively large, but still fit in the palm of your hand. You don't want to go too small, because then you're not going to have enough clay to cut your tile, and too large, you're doing a lot of extra work for a single tile. So about a softball size is what you're going to need. I'm going to go ahead, once I've grabbed softball size, set that piece of clay aside and deal with my air dry clay. Again, this is air dry clay, so she needs to be sealed up right away. So the steps to take care of our clay, as we've gone over many times, but steps again, we're going to add a little bit of water. I have a spray bottle. I'm just going to spray it once so you can see there's moisture in the bag now. And then I'm going to take all the air out, squeezing all that air, getting nice and close to the clay, and sealing. And as I seal it, I need to keep squeezing that air out, because air is going to keep getting back in. So sealing, squeezing, sealing, squeezing, all sorts of fun. Ooh, I actually ran into clay in my seal, so I'm going to remove that. There we go. As you guys practice more and more, this process gets a little bit faster. There we go. Last step before we throw it off is to check the seal, see if there's any clay, if it's sealed properly, like I just ran over it, and I see that I have clay in the seal still. So I'm going to go ahead, open that up, get that out of there. If you have clay in your seal, it is not going to be closed fully. So I'm getting that air out again, sealing, and checking once more. There we go. Heard some extra pops that I missed. Perfect. Once your bag is sealed, I'm going to set it off to the side. We're not using that bag until the very end when we clean up. I'm going to grab that softball-sized piece of clay again. Step two, once you have your softball-sized piece of clay, you've cleaned up your clay bag, we need to turn this softball-sized piece of clay into a cube or a rectangular prism. So the way to do this is to take your clay. We don't want to touch it too much because it's air dry, but we want to take our clay and we want to hit it into the table. Whatever surface you're working on, you're going to want to hit it into the table, pick it up, turn it, hit it, turn it, hit it, over and over again. I'm going to turn it this way now, so that we are making a cube. So you can see it's starting to look a little bit more cube-like. Apologies for the noise. If your final design, because we're making these tiles based off of your guys' final designs, if your final design has a longer tile shape, so like a rectangle or an oval, you're going to want to do what I'm doing right now and create that rectangular prism that's a little bit longer than the normal cube that's about equal on all sides. So if you have a longer tile, you're going to want a longer rectangular prism to start. Most people have that square, so I'm going to make mine a cube. This does not have to be perfect by any means. It's just giving us some nice flat surfaces to work on for our slab, especially since we don't have a wire cutter to get it really flat to start. This is the best way to do it for what we got. Almost there. Again, does not have to be perfect. This part's really fun to me. Taking out all aggression onto clay. There we go. Almost there. Just kind of making sure I have a nice, again, flat surface. There's not too many imperfections. A little bit is fine, but those are going to be really stretched out once we start rolling that slab. So I want to work those out now so that our slab is better in the long run. All right, we're going to call that good enough. I lied. Now it's good enough. All right, so once we have our cube-ish shape, we're going to now need to start rolling. So for rolling our slabs, I'm going to set that guy aside again. I'm going to grab my cylinder. I'm using a PVC pipe. I have it cut down to a size where I can get both hands on it. But if you have a smaller cylinder, one hand is fine as well. But with our cylinders, I want you guys to practice on the table or whatever surface you're working on first before you touch the clay, because a lot of people, when they start rolling, they like to push really hard where they're using way too much force, especially if you have a rolling pin. A lot of people use the handles and push way too far into it. So I want you to practice on the table first, just rolling evenly, just like when we rolled coils last semester. It's that same even pressure, working back and forth. You don't want it to be too light, otherwise it rolls away, or too hard where you're hurting your hand as you're rolling or gripping it. You don't want to do any of that. Fingers out and just rolling. Once you feel like you have a good grasp, you're pretty consistent in the pressure you're adding, we're going to go ahead and start rolling our clay. So I have my clay here. Now I'm going to show you a couple things that people do wrong. So do not follow me yet. A couple things that people like to do wrong a lot of times is, number one, they add too much pressure right off the go. So they'll push in, don't do this. They'll push in really hard. Again, they kind of start gripping, or they just push too hard. And what happens is you get this weird soup bowl kind of skate rink look to it. This is not good. This is not going to give you a consistent slab. If you catch yourself doing this, all you have to do is take that cube, hit it against the table again, work out that spot. See, just like that, she's flat again. So we want to make sure that we're working out those spots when that happens. Try to avoid it. Other issue people have a lot when they start rolling, again, don't do this, is that they'll not pay attention to how far they're rolling, and they'll roll all the way off the slab. This creates this hooked edge like that, which again is not good for our slab. So I'm going to try to fix it, push it back up, and hit it against the table again, straightening it out. Both things are not good because as the slab kind of flattens together, those issues become much, much worse the further you go. So I'm fixing up my cube again. There we go. So now to actually do it correctly, so now you get to follow along. I'm grabbing my cylinder. The way to do this correctly, again, fingers out, open face like that. You are rolling, again, even pressure, back and forth a few times all the way to the edge without going off the edge, so be really careful. Rolling a few times, stopping. This is the important part. Pick it up, turn it, like so. 90-degree turn. And then again, even pressure all the way across. Rolling a few times, stopping, picking it up, turning it. Rolling, even pressure. I'm going to move my microphone, sorry about that. Even pressure, a few times, pick up, turn it. Rolling a few times, even pressure all the way across. I'm not pushing too hard at the edge as it starts to stretch. Whoops, see, just like that, I pushed too hard. Now when you turn it this time, you're back to your starting position. So wherever you started, once you get back to that spot, I'm going to take it, I'm going to pick it up. You'll see it's starting to kind of flex out like that, that's good. But I'm going to take it and I'm flip it over like a pancake. I'm going to follow the same process, rolling a few times, pick it up, turn it. Now as you start adding pressure and rolling, you may notice that your slab's going to want to stick to the surface that you're working on, totally depending on what kind of surface. Right now, mine's a very slippery area. The clay likes to stick to it a lot. So I'm just being really careful not to push too hard, making sure my area is not wet, so that the clay does not stick to that table. Again, I got back to my starting position, so I'm going to pick it up and flip it. You'll see, like that, those two sides are going to start squishing down into each other. That's good. So I flipped it, a few times roll, pick it up, turn it. Again, being really careful not to get my clay stuck to the table there. And you're just doing this process over and over again until you reach about 1/4 inch thickness. 1/4 inch thickness. That's about the width of your pinky. And when I'm talking about the width, I mean this side. So our little sandwich happening here. I have a long way to go. But if you do not have a ruler, use your pinky. It's approximately 1/4 inch. I'm going to go a little thinner than my pinky because my pinky is a little bit thicker. And I'm rolling, turning. Once I get back to that starting position, once again, I'm flipping it. So again, you can see it's starting to kind of combine together. That's what it should look like. Now typically as I'm rolling, when we do slabs properly, we use 2 wood blocks to make sure that we are having a nice even surface all the way across, that it is the proper thickness, that it's consistent, all of that. However, we do not have wood blocks in your guys' kits. We could not fit them. It would be too much cost. So we just have to be really careful as we're making our slab not to push too hard or too lightly in any area. I gotta be consistent. Consistency is key. You'll notice she's starting to become a nice little circle here. If you have the rectangular prism and you're doing a rectangle tile or an oval tile, you are going to want to stretch out your slab one direction more than the other. So I would spend more time rolling it until it's a little bit longer. And when I turn it, so this is for the oval rectangles, I would roll it a little bit less. And then when I turn it again, stretching it out that way. Now again, I'm doing the square tiles. A little piece of clay in there, sorry. I'm doing the square tiles, so I do want that kind of circular shape. I also caught an air bubble. Sometimes air bubbles show up, especially if I'm using recycled clay, which I am. So I just poked a little hole into that air bubble so it doesn't cause a problem for me later. This part is what takes the longest, trying to get that slab nice and pretty, consistent. Feel free to follow along as you are making your slabs. Another thing, as you're working, to make sure that it is consistent flat across, the way that I check if it is flat is just to pet the slab, which sounds a little silly. But if you pet it and your hand slides across it perfectly flat, you're doing a great job. If you're petting it and it feels kind of wavy, like it's a little bit bumpy, that means you're a little inconsistent in the pressure that you're applying with the cylinder. Way to fix it, kind of like a pizza, is to just Gently make sure it's very flat, gently kind of flatten it out like that. And then when you go back with your cylinder, make sure you're even all the way across, and you can keep kind of checking it. Even all the way across. I'm going to keep going until I'm at that 1/4 inch thickness. Another air pocket. Working that out. We're using air dry clay, so air pockets aren't going to be too much of a problem for us. I'm used to doing ceramics, so I got to get rid of those air pockets. It's totally fine if your slab stretches and breaks like that. As long as you have enough area in the middle to cut the tile, you're going to be good. That's why we grabbed that softball sized piece of clay. I'm almost there. So I'm kind of at this point checking. That's about pinky width. I do want mine to be slightly thinner. I'll just go slightly thinner on it. Again, because my pinky's a little bit thicker. She's fine. Checking. And I'm going to flip one more time just to get that surface clean. All right. And I like the other side more, so I'm going to work with this side. So once you have your tile, your slab, I mean, again, check it. Pinky width thickness all the way across. So if I check it at any point, it should be the same width everywhere in the slab. So check that. If you have an area that's really thick, you can use the cylinder just to roll out that spot. If you have an area that's really thin, you may want to avoid that spot as we are cutting out the tile. Or if you feel like you're really inconsistent and need to restart, that's what this video tutorial is for. Feel free to rewind and watch any of the parts that you need again. So now we're going to cut out the tile. So the requirements for our tile is to be at least 4 inches by 4 inches. You can make it bigger than that, absolutely. But we need at least 4 inches by 4 inches width and length. If you're doing a different shape, you're going to want to do it according to the shape of your design at this point. So if you have an oval, you're going to draw an oval. If you have a rectangle, you're going to start with that 4-inch width and go longer than 4-inch height or length. If you're doing a triangle, you want 4-inch width, 4-inch length, and then you can kind of build the triangle off of that. I'm going to show square. So what I'm going to need now is either a ruler or some sort of straight edge. My suggestion is to use this small modeling tool, our small popsicle stick, because what's nice about this guy is that it is almost 4 inches, a little bit bigger than 4 inches. So if you discount the rounded parts, it's 4 inches, or if you just want to go a little bit short, you can see the small modeling tool is close to 4 inches. So just use a little bit less length on that small modeling tool if you don't have a ruler. I'm going to show both, but we're going to now cut out our tile. For this project, we are going to want to cut out in the middle of the slab because this is going to be most likely the best quality is right in the middle. If we're doing bigger projects like boxes where we have to use more than one cut in the slab, we don't like to do the middle because it's a lot of waste of clay. But for this, we're going to go to the middle of the clay. Sorry, I'm moving things over so it's easier for me. I'm going to grab my ruler. I'm going to move close to the bottom of the clay. I don't want to go all the way to the bottom because then I'm going to get all this gross cracked bits around. So I'm moving a little bit up to where I know the clay is nice and good quality. So my ruler's down. I'm now going to grab my needle tool, my toothpick. So I'm grabbing my toothpick and I'm going to lightly, very lightly draw a line across my ruler up to 4 inches. So I'm stopping at 4 inches. I'm then, see, you see that light line? I didn't cut through, just lightly drew it. I then move the ruler to the end, the very end, match it at 4 inches. Now here's the thing. The ruler can be deceiving. We're like, oh yeah, it's straight. Ruler can be still very crooked. So I want to make sure, double check that my ruler is straight. It is perpendicular to my previous line. I'm not going crooked on it. Once I feel like I've done that, I'm again lightly tracing up to 4 inches. Again, whatever design you're doing, you're going to want to cut according to that design. I'm going to do the other 2 lines with the popsicle stick, the small modeling tool. So I'm going to kind of line her up at the edge here, going a little bit off, making sure it's not crooked. I'm not using the full length of the small popsicle stick, but it still looks exactly like the ruler marks. So where I stopped on the previous one, again making sure it's really straight, and then lightly tracing that line there. So this could be done with a small popsicle stick or a ruler, does not matter, as long as you can get those straight lines. All right, so now we have this lightly drawn. Before we cut it, you want to double check, make sure you're very happy with this. If you have a chunk of like the gross clay that's inside of your tile, you're going to want to move the whole thing over. You don't want any of these imperfections in the tile because it's going to hurt your project later on. Same thing, if you notice that it's really crooked, you can just take it and smush and try again. If it's really much of a hot mess, take the whole thing, flip it over, try again. So before you cut it, check, are you happy with it? If you are, we move on to this step. So the next step is to actually cut the tile out. And to cut the tile, I'm going to trace over those same lines, pushing in just a little bit. So I'm not cutting all the way through yet. The reason for this is that we don't want to drag the clay around unnecessarily. Dragging the clay will make the sides not clean. It'll make our project look less professional. So once I've traced it a little bit deeper, I'm going to go again. Just tracing over those same lines over and over again, pressing slightly deeper each time I go. Now, depending on how thick your slab is, this may take 3 times, it may take 10 times, who knows? So don't feel like it has to be the same amount that I'm tracing. Especially I'm going really light on it. I'm just tracing that shape over and over again until I feel it hit the table or whatever surface you're working on. Try to make sure to be as straight as you can with the lines. So that it is consistent all the way across. My corners are a little bit messy, so I'm going to try to clean those up now. But I can also clean it up afterwards. So again, tracing over and over again until you cut through the table. So I'm definitely touching the table at this point. I can feel it. So very last step here is to remove the slab from around the tile. Once you do that, you are golden. You have a tile. You can clean up any of that excess messy stuff so that we are ready to start sculpting next class. How to clean up these specific slabs and our tile. We do not want our tile to have extra water on it. So once you have this cut, do make sure before you put it away, take a picture for the progress update and add the brief description of what you did. So describe that process just briefly so that I know that you know how to do this. So update the progress update before you clean up, picture, brief description on Google Classroom. So as I was saying, we do not want to add water to the tile. We want it to get a little bit leather hard so that it's easier to sculpt with next class. So I'm going to actually add this to a separate baggie. I'm being very careful to remove it. There we go. So I'm going to add this to a separate baggie. I've been using a small sandwich bag. Now if you have some extra sandwich bags lying around, perfect. I'm actually using the bag that the tools came in. As long as I can keep track of my tools, not lose them, feel free to use the tool bag until we're done with this project. So I'm going to open that up. I do have some tiles in here already. I'm just kind of stacking them on top. But when you put your tile away, do not add water. Close up, get all the air out, and seal. So the rest of the steps are normal, but just do not add water. If you're adding your tile to your big bag of clay, this thing can get really messy really fast. So if you put your tile in, again, do not add water, but also make sure to flatten out a space for it and make sure nothing bumps into it, because the second it goes in here and gets messed up, you're probably gonna have to restart the tile, which is not good. So you wanna be very careful. I highly recommend a separate baggie, but if you don't have that option, put it in here carefully. The extra clay, I'm just gonna fold them up because we have extra slabs to work with now if we wanna add stuff to our tiles. So I'm just folding those up, and I'm gonna put that in that extra baggie of clay here. Doesn't matter how I put that in. Oop, oop. Now, if your tile's not in here, you can add water. So you're gonna wanna follow all the same steps if your tile is not in the big bag, but if you're adding your tile, again, be very careful and do not add water. My tile's not in here. I'm gonna add water and follow the same steps as we did at the beginning. Getting that air out, squeezing all the air out. Sealing it and checking that seal. All right, so that's it for this video. You should have a tile cut to your design shape. Progress update due as soon as you get this done, technically due today, but if you needed extra time because you were absent, get it done as soon as you do that step. So progress update, make sure your final design's turned in, make sure all your clay's sealed, clean up your area, and you guys are good to go. Have a good one.